welcome to the lunch session. I'm sure this is going to be an exciting session, as much as exciting as your lunch packs are, I'm sure.
Hello everyone, my name's Lester Kivitt and we're absolutely delighted to welcome you to this discussion where we will delve deep into what I'm sure we are all vested in, and that is of course the landscape of actuarial remuneration.
I think indeed we have a riveting conversation lined up for you titled The Actuarial Remuneration Landscape, brought to you by SA3. This discussion will be led by none other than distinguished WILHELM de Wet.
And of course, HENDA PRETORIUS is in the audience, so that if there is a time for conversation and questions, we'll just hand her the mic and she'll be forced to talk to us this evening. Unfortunately, JURIE is ill and unable to join us here this afternoon.
Before we jump into the meat of the session, let's set the stage. You know, SA3, they've been the forefront in conducting a comprehensive salary survey among actuarial professions for the last number of years within South Africa.
And that's right. In fact, back in 2020, insights were shared from the survey at the annual Actuarial Convention, and it became the second most popular session of that entire convention.
And so this year we're taking that conversation further. We're going to revisit those results, armed with even more data spanning from 2016 to 2022.
So what can we expect? What is in this discussion? Well, there's a packed agenda.
And to top it all off, we'll be making some predictions for 2023 as well.
So it's going to be engaging, an informative session. We hand over now to WILHELM de Wet, who gets us started talking about actuarial remuneration, and that landscape. Hello, WILHELM.
Thanks, Lester. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Roxanne. And thank you to ASSA for the opportunity. And thank you to everyone that's sacrificing their lunch to be here. I know it's a big sacrifice. Appreciate the effort. And I really hope that at the end of the session, you will walk out of here saying, wow, that was worth my lunch break. So that's my hope. According to the registrations, there's supposed to be roughly 800 people in the room today, with another 300 joining us online. And I think the question is, why are we so fascinated with salaries? You know, why do we want to know what other people are earning, and how do I compare against them? And I want to venture a guess by saying, I believe it's because deep down in our hearts, we all hate unfairness. And we want life to be fair. Isn't that true? And to illustrate this, I thought, I suspected that it will take a bit of time for people to arrive. So I'm going to start with my presentation with a 3-minute video clip that sort of perfectly sums up, our feelings towards unfairness. Some of you might have seen it before, but I think it's a perfect example. Sorry, can we just get sound on that? Let's try again. Nope. Any of the sound technicians? I can't see you there at the back. Where's Aha. Let's try again. It worked perfectly this morning. Are you guys on it? No. Let's try it without sound. I will sort of speak. So it's a study that they did with 2 monkeys. And it's a study that's been done 10 years ago. It's now been done with dogs, lots of different animals, but it was originally done with the capuchin monkeys. And what they did is they had 2 monkeys, next to each other. and sorry, and they would sort of give these two monkeys. It's two monkeys sitting next to each other, and if you give cucumber to both of them, they're perfectly happy to do the same task 25 times in a row. But if you give cucumber to one monkey and grapes to another monkey, and then we will sort of see what happens. I don't know. It looks like they're doing something at the back, but no, it's not. Can we just continue with the video? Then no. But in the end, it's actually way funnier when you see it. Then is the video going to continue now? Sorry, it sort of looks like it stops and then it goes back again. Roxanne, is someone? They're on lunch.
Anyone from the tech team, are you working on trying to get that sound? You can give us a thumbs up from where you are in your corner.
Otherwise, I can just skip it. Anyway, the one
So
monkey
thumbs down.
gets a cucumber, perfectly happy. The second monkey gets a grape. And then the second time, one monkey gets a piece of cucumber. He sort of looks at it and then sort of just chucks it back at the person. And then they try again and they just chuck it back again. So it's actually, no. So let's continue. Sorry about that. It worked perfectly this morning, so I don't know what happened there. So now that I've set the scene, what will I cover? Firstly, I'll cover methodology and disclaimers. I'll look at the demographics of the respondents that have contributed to our survey. I'll look at practice area, location, gender, and BEE status. And then I will look at the 22 salary survey results, so that's last year's survey. And then once I've done that, I will look at the trends over the last 7 years. We've got 7 years of data, which is very interesting. And then perhaps the most interesting part for me personally was the 23 sneak peek. We've got some interesting slides on that. And then looking forward to 2024 and beyond. And then I'll end off my presentation with the 4 secrets to a happy life. So why a salary survey? Initially, when we started, as recruiters, myself, HENDA, and JURIE, we've got 40 years of actuarial recruitment history and experience. So I think we had a very good idea of what people should be earning, but it's always nice when you've got some data to back that up. So that's why we started doing the survey 7 years ago. And it helped us to manage expectations, not only on the employer side, but also on the candidate side. And then when it did get to sort of negotiation stage, if you've got a data point with which you can work from, then it's a lot easier. So our data contributions are voluntary, so people contribute on their own. It's run over a 3-month period from mid-September to around mid-December. And we then publish the results early in January. The data is kept securely, confidentially. We haven't shared. I've had a few people ask me, are you willing to sort of share the data? And the answer is no. We've got over 1,000. Last year we had just over 1,000, I think 1,050 people participating in our survey. And this year I think we're standing on roughly 600 people already. And if you haven't done so now, might be a good time while I do the rest of the disclaimers, then you can take out your phone, open the app. It will take you 1 minute. If it takes you longer than a minute to complete, then your salary has too many zeros. So, but yeah, please contribute. We do some data cleaning. We go out of our way to make sure that the data points are clean. I mean, if something doesn't look right, we will phone up the candidate and say, listen, this is what you said. Is it right? Is it wrong? And then correct the data in that way. What I want to sort of just state is there's no obvious intent from our side to mislead anyone or to distort the results. What we get is what you see today. And then no allowance was made for timing or annual increases. So we just took it as a snapshot for those 3 months. And then lastly, just so that nobody throws me into jail, the results are of course only as good as the information which is provided to us. They provide one input into considering salary levels, and care should be taken in concluding too much into that. So now that that's out of the way, our demographics, our survey respondents, roughly 53% of our respondents were in the life industry. It's slightly higher than what the ASA stats are, so I think our results are skewed towards the life industry. But having said that, I think what the bulk of the actuaries in South Africa work in the life industry, so what happens in the life industry definitely impacts the other industries as well. There was a steady decline in pensions actuaries. I think we started off with like 12 or 13% of actuaries in 2016. It's now down to 5%. General insurance and banking increased significantly over the last 7 years. Location, we've got roughly 61% of our respondents were in Joburg, 34% in Cape Town, and 5% were from overseas or Bonnievale, Bloemfontein, Durban, those places. Gender, we had 73% male respondents versus 27 female. Associates and students, roughly similar split. And then corporate versus consulting was very fascinating. We've got 73% of our respondents are working in corporate, whereas 27% in consulting. It's a 28% increase in consulting since 2016. Some reasons for that, probably lots of regulatory changes, SAM, IFRS 17, and then also BEE pressure. I think many companies are struggling to fill their roles with BEE candidates, and as a result, they don't fill the roles and use consultants to do the work. So in terms of BEE status, very interesting is our stats mirror ASA stats almost identically. So, and our stats have stayed constant for the last 7 years. So if you look at the blue bars, that's the fellow actuaries, and the sort of red bars are the student actuaries, the students and associates. So qualified actuaries, we've got 5% black actuaries versus 26% students. 26% of all the students that have contributed in the sort of African black category. If you look at the white category, 66% of all actuaries are white, and 45% of all the students that contributed were white. The Indian split is roughly 15%, and the foreign nationals 11 and 9%. Then some interesting data points I thought to kick us off would be median TGP, so total guaranteed package, that's guaranteed remuneration for qualified actuaries, associates, and student members. For the qualified actuaries, the median TGP is about 1.5 million, for the associates about 1 million, and for student members about 700. The minimum TGP, so the lowest person in the survey for qualified actuaries, 550. Minimum TGP for associates, 575, and the students, 275. Maximum, that would be nice, is a 6.4 as a qualified actuaries. And then for the associates, about 3 million, and maximum TGP for students is 1.9. Minimum bonus, 0% in all three categories, and the maximum bonus, 6.4 in the qualified category, 3.3 for the associates, and then about 1 million for the student actuaries. Some other interesting data points. The median TGP for graduates in our surveys last year was around 485. And the median TDP guaranteed package for newly qualified actuaries with less than 5 years experience was around 900. So that's guaranteed packages. So if you look at we looked at sort of how salaries follow years of experience. If you look at the sort of navy line, the almost black line, you'll see that salaries follow years of experience in a sort of a straight upward line, which is what you would expect. The secondary axis, the yellow line, is average numbers of years of post-qualification experience. And then we also added the light blue line is the median for 2016 survey, and the sort of darker blue line is the 2019 survey. So you'll see that salaries moved up slightly from 2019, but not as much. And the big reason for that is, and I'll show you now, was COVID. So that was guaranteed packages. This is total remuneration. So total estimated remuneration is just guaranteed packages plus variable packages, gives you total estimated remuneration. And I think what you can see here is that the bands, the red blocks, gives you the 25th and the 75th percentile. So for total expected remuneration, the bands are very big. The moment you bring in variable remuneration, it's the person between the 25th and the 75th percentile, there's quite a big gap. Then for students, there we'll again sort of similar trend. The secondary axis there is a number of outstanding exams. So it sort of starts off with a roughly sort of 5 exams outstanding, and it sort of tapers down to about 3.5 later on. So that's for students. I'll just go through that quickly. Trends over the past 7 years. Here you'll see the increases that we got from our surveys over the last 7 years. And the big culprit, COVID in 2020, you'll see for qualified actuaries, on average salaries decreased, mainly because of bonuses. That decreased significantly. On the student side, it took 2 years. I mean, there was a big impact for 2 years. So if you look at the compound effect over 6 years, it's and you look at annualized inflation of 4.9%. Both actuaries and the students actually got lower increases than CPI. And the big reason for that is COVID. I mean, we haven't managed to sort of make up that gap. But who knows, in 2023, and I'll show you the sneak peek results in a minute. So that gives you just the cumulative total remuneration. So the navy line is inflation, and you'll see both students and qualified actuaries, because of COVID, because of the dip, just sort of stayed below the inflation line. And but yeah, I'll give you an update just now. Very interesting, and I've had a few discussions about this. We always hear about the gender pay gap. I mean, and like I say, what we get is what you see. So there's no intent to mislead or anything. We just sort of looked at the data, and if you look at male, female, so the navy line is females, and the red line is males, and those lines mirror each other almost exactly. So from our data, it suggests there's for qualified actuaries, total expected remuneration is absolutely no difference. Then by BEE status, I think we get there's a lot of perception out there. There's a lot of questions about that. From our data, qualified actuaries, very interestingly, up until about 7 years, salaries are very similar. And then for the 8 to 10 years group, we saw that the non-EE candidates, which is the sort of the navy line, and the EE candidates are the red lines. So for 8 to 10 years group, the non-EE candidates is slightly higher. But then also, if you look at the average numbers of years of post-qualification experience for the 8 to 10 years group, it's actually a bit higher for the non-EE candidates. So that could explain the difference for the 8 to 10 years group. But then from 11 to 13 and 14 to 18 years group, as if, I mean, and the reality is we in South Africa, there's a big demand for employment equity candidates at all employers. There's not a single employer in South Africa, that doesn't have that demand, and now that's gone. We're back. So, so the difference for the 11 to 13 years group is about 10%, and for the 14 to 18 years group is about 20% difference, where the BEE candidates earn slightly more than the non-EE candidates. For the students, the picture looks slightly different. Initially, you'll see that the non-EE candidates, the navy line, earns slightly more than the employment equity candidates, up until about 7 years experience. But if you look at the number of outstanding exams, what we see in our data is that the number of outstanding exams for the employment equity candidates are slightly higher than for the, on average, about 3 exams when they start off than the non-EE candidates. And that could be the reason for the difference in salaries. But then when you get to sort of 6, 7 years experience, it looks like as if the number of outstanding exams sort of converge, and as a result, the salaries for the two groups converge as well. Very interesting salaries for managers and specialists. So we all know managing people is difficult. You have to set up with a lot of nonsense, and people are difficult to but you are rewarded for managing people. I see Reinhold is laughing, I don't know. But yeah, so the difference is about 10% initially, but then once you get to sort of 8 to 10 years, the difference is sort of 25, and then by the time you get to 18 years experience, the difference is probably about 50% in total packages if you manage people or not. So then differences by location, always tricky. There's always this perception that the Joburg actuaries earn a lot more. The cars are a lot grander up here than what they are in Cape Town. So our data suggests that up until 7 years, there's no difference between Cape Town and Johannesburg. But then for that sort of 8 to 10 years bracket, and as a recruiter, that's probably where our biggest demand is as well. Most employers are looking for actuaries in that sort of 8 to 10 years bracket, that have been qualified for 2 to 3 years, don't study anymore. And there the demand is very high, and we see the demand a lot higher in Johannesburg than what it is in Cape Town. And as a result, the difference in that sort of 8 to 10 years group was about 16, 17%. For the 11 to 13 years group is about 7.5%, and then 14 to 18 also about 7%. And then it converges again at the 18 plus group. So yeah, that was very interesting for us. Now, a sneak peek for, so it's, what we were seeing this year is, the offers that came through our doors were significantly higher. The increases people got were really good. And, we were wondering whether that would be, displayed in the data. And at this stage, so what we did is we looked at the 350 people that have completed the survey last year and this year already. That was last week. We looked at just those data and sort of looked at their increases. And what you'll see is for the guaranteed package on the actuarial, on the qualified actuary side, was roughly 7%, and the total expected remuneration increased to by about 14%. So that is quite significant. That's almost 3 times inflation. And the bonuses are looking good as well. If you look at the student members, it's even higher. But there are a couple of reasons for that. And promotions, again, moves to other companies, which typically would give you like a bump in salary. Immigration, we've seen a lot of immigration. There's a lot of people that have left South Africa, which means the supply of actuaries have gone down, and as a result of lower supply, packages have gone up. I still think there's a bit of COVID correction as well. And then I also see that the actuarial skill set is very, very marketable. So we see actuaries branch off into other businesses, and as a result of that, it just pushes up salaries as well. Yeah, so if you look at that sort of cumulative picture again, if that sort of holds, if that trend holds for the rest of the survey, you'll see that both qualified actuaries and students, I expect the student numbers to come down slightly once the graduates start filling in their details. So, but it looks like we're almost on the inflation mark now. Then we sneaked in a question this year: is do you feel you are underpaid, overpaid, or underpaid, fairly paid, or overpaid relative to your peers? And given that half of the people, completing the survey are below the median, I think if you look at the qualified, if you look at students, I think students are a different generation. They tend to be more unhappy, but there's about 40% of them that maybe they're just better at math. There's about 40% of them that feel they're being underpaid. About 60% of them feel they're being fairly paid. When you compare that to the actuaries, about 30% feel they're being underpaid, relative to about 70% of actuaries feeling that they are being fairly paid. What's fascinating, and I can't share the results on a public platform, is when you try and break that down into all the different categories. That's very, very interesting. I shared some with my wife. I said, "Do you think I can say that?" And my wife would say, "No, my husband." So my wife is my soundboard, and I trust her judgment. Very interesting for employers as well is how many days a week do you work from the office? And I think the bulk of people sort of work 3 days or less in the office. So both for students and associates and fellows. And very interesting, the next question was, what is your preference for work from home versus work from the office? And what we see is that 90% of all the respondents said, listen, I don't want to go back into the office full time. And you know, the flip side of that is true as well, is, you know, roughly more than 80% of all the respondents said, I also don't want to just work from home. You know, I want that connection with other people. So, I mean, if you're an employer, and there are some of them that says, listen, I want you back in the office full time, you're looking, you know, you're reducing your pool from people that's willing to work, you know, at your company, you know, significantly. So I thought this was a very interesting stat. Then what will happen with salaries in 2024? I think there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. There's upcoming US elections, which always affects us whether we want it or not. There's South African elections. I mean, there's load shedding that is currently, it looks like it's improving, but there's still a lot of uncertainties. There's infrastructure that's collapsing, you know, in certain parts of our country, which is not great. There's a war in the Middle East, Ukraine. All of that creates uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, employers are reluctant to recruit, and people are reluctant to move. So that has a downward pressure on salaries. But our projected CPI for next year is around 5%. We still see a very strong demand for actuaries locally, but we do see international demand tapering down. I had a conversation with a recruiter in the UK last week that said the appetite for UK life insurance companies to sponsor work permits has almost gone down to zero. So, whereas 6 months, a year ago, 2 years ago, it was very, very different. And then in terms of longer term prospects, I always, they say your children don't do what you say, they do what you do. In terms of longer term prospects, these are, on the left hand side, is HENDA with her second eldest child is Handri. She's a first year actuarial science student at Stellenbosch. And on the right is my eldest, Christian. He's going to study actuarial science next year at Stellenbosch as well. So I think it says something if we as recruiters feel we can encourage our children to become actuaries, because we feel the prospects for actuaries in South Africa and worldwide is still very, very good. I want to end this session with a bit of wisdom. Why is it that I include myself in that, we all chase money. We all want more. And I think the answer is because we all believe the lie that if we have more money, we will be happier. It really, and we won't say that. We won't say that, you know, out loud, but the way we live our lives communicates to the world that we believe if we have more money, we will be happier. And this brings me to John Paul Getty. So John Paul Getty, in the 70s, he was considered to be the world's richest man. He made more money in a minute than what most of us will earn in a lifetime. And if you look at his life, he was married 5 times, he had 5 divorces, he had 5 children, and didn't have a relationship with any of them. So at the end of his life, on his, when he's nearing the end of his life, he gave the following quote. He said, "I would gladly give all my millions for just one marital success and a deep relationship with my children." So if you look closely, the world's wealthiest people, celebrities in the world, in most cases have completely dysfunctional lives. And yet we all strive to have more and more. I think the Bible offers an alternative, and I want to end with let's just call it the 4 secrets of a happy life. Firstly, I want to encourage us all to be grateful for what we have. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says, "In everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Regardless of your faith, all of us want to know what's God's will for my life. And if you want to know what's God's will for your life, God's will for your life is to be grateful for what you have. Secondly, be teachable. Philippians 4:11, the Apostle Paul says, "For I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances." The word he uses here for learned is the same word that you use to learn to ride a bicycle. I have a 7-year-old, and a couple of years ago, he had to learn to ride a bicycle. And I mean, it didn't come naturally. I mean, he had a couple of nasty falls and bruised knees, but eventually he got it. And it's the same word. We need to learn how to be content. And I want to sort of say is maybe next time you find yourself in a tricky spot, rather than sort of finding an easy way out, is to sort of say, maybe the question you should ask is, what should I learn from this? Thirdly, be wise. In Luke 12:15-21, Jesus said, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed." And he says, be on your guard. It's almost as if, when you are greedy, usually you're the last person to know it. People around you notice it, but you're the last person to notice it. And he says, life, some of the translation says, true life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. He then goes on to sort of share the parable of the rich man that had this amazing crop. And he said, "Listen, I'm going to tear down my barn, build a bigger one. I'm going to fill it up to the brim. And then I will sit back and enjoy my life and have a great life." And then God said to him, "You fool, tonight you will die, and who will then have what you've stored up?" And for me, it's fascinating to think of it. Some of the strongest words in the Bible was reserved not for bad people, not for murderers and sinners, and it was reserved for good people storing up for themselves. That was very interesting. And then lastly, be dependent. Acts 20:35 says, "It's more blessed to give than to receive." Why is it that the most generous people I know are the most happiest, they're the most content, and they have a peace about them that is difficult to explain? And I'm not talking about billionaires giving millions. I'm talking about ordinary people, giving their time, giving their resources, giving their talents that was gifted to them by God, to help other people closest to them. So the 4 secrets of a happy life: be grateful, be teachable, be wise, do not store up just for the sake of storing up, be dependent. It's more blessed to give than to receive. I thank you.
Thank you, Willem de Wet. We have about 7 minutes for, I'm sure, the questions that are going to be racing in. So I already see a hand right at the back. We will prioritize. Yes, I see you waving. Could we get a microphone to the gentleman? I'm sure it's a gentleman. And by the way, I've seen the monkey video. It is hilarious.
Hi, WILHELM. It's Samir de Klerk from Old Mutual. Yes, I am a gentleman and comfortable in my skin. I've got 2 questions. The first one is, in 4 years' time, at which employer will you be placing your son? And the second is, have you thought about going into full data geek mode? Have you thought about fitting a GLM or some other predictive model to say what should an actuary be what should a salary be for a given actuary?
Sorry, if I heard you correctly, the first one was where am I going to place my son? He would need to decide. I will guide him. I will give him some good interview tips. But yeah, regarding a model of what should an actuary earn, it's very, very difficult. There will always be people earning more than the median, and there will always be people earning less than the median. So, I think our job is to sort of say, this is what's happening in the market, and leave the discussions to the employers themselves, because I don't know how people are performing, and some people are performing better than others, and they should be earning more than the median, and some people are not performing as good as, and I think we all think we're performing very well. If I had to sort of do a survey amongst all of you, and you would have to rate yourself against all the other people in this room, you would say, no, I'm in the top half. But the reality is some of you will be in the bottom half. But yeah, so, we have thought about building a model, and maybe that's something we should look into. But I can just see the questions coming from that. And so we'd rather give ranges, is to sort of say, you know, if you've got this qualification, you know, this numbers of years experience working in this industry, this should be your range. I don't know if I answer your question.
We have a question in the middle section.
Hi, I just want to say thank you for the note on which you ended your presentation. I really appreciated that, and I think that touches in nice with the question about, do you feel you are fairly paid? And I mean, it's interesting who feels they're underpaid, but I also found it interesting that more people don't think they're overpaid given the you know, the income inequality in our country. And if you look at those ranges, you know, some students with 3 years experience earning R1 million per annum. Yes, so, okay, what's the question I'm actually asking? I think maybe it's a bit contentious, but do you think based on all of that, that we are greedy and that we are overpaid?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, it's everyone, I mean, we all, I mean, I think 4 years ago I ended my presentation with saying, you know, we all have different gifts. And I mean, we are created with certain opportunities, with a certain background, you know, with a mother and a father growing up with a certain schooling. And, you know, we all have, you know, different opportunities. And I think what you make of that is I mean, you can earn a lot of money and I think not be greedy. And you can earn very little and be greedy. So it's not a number thing. I mean, you can have, I mean, where I live in Bonnievale, it's a rural town. I mean, there are people earning like 5,000 Rand a month. And to them, it's like they've got more than enough. You know, and so I don't know whether I'm answering your questions, but I don't think we are overpaid or we are greedy. I think it's a personal thing.
I'm going to ask the gentleman at the back and also the gentleman in front to ask their questions after one another. So we are running short on time. So, gentleman in the green.
Yes, thank you, WILHELM. So, yeah, just one question in terms of the remuneration between different fields. Do you see a difference, for example, in pensions where there's a decrease in actuaries, or is it relatively similar?
So again, doing the comparison, you need a certain number of data points, and if you don't have enough data in some of the brackets, we don't have enough data to have a meaningful comparison. But that is something we will be looking at. I mean, it's not something I want to sort of put on a podium is to say, I think the banking actuaries are earning a lot more, and then, you know, next week everyone phones me and says they want a banking job. So, I mean, those kind of things are very interesting, but I commit to look at that in a bit more detail. But yeah, it's sensitive. So I don't know whether it will sort of serve any purpose to sort of talk about it from this platform.
Hi, Adam. Just when looking and using this survey, which areas should we be a bit more careful with because of the number of data points there and the conclusions we should draw versus where there's a little bit more data points? That's the first question. And then the second one, you guys disclosed the 25th and the 75th percentile, that band. How do we try and make sense of things outside of that, where I think also conversations sometimes tend to happen?
So Wynand, we have. I think we've reached a stage where we've got, I think, sufficient data in most of those groupings. The reason why we picked the groupings is because we feel we've got sufficient data in those groupings. So, I mean, yeah, maybe sort of towards the ends. I mean, yeah. So I think right at the start, maybe actuaries with less than 4 years experience. You know, that's tricky because there aren't that many. They still need to do their work-based skills, and most of their admin is not always great, so they take a bit longer. But if you making sense of numbers outside of the sort of the 75th percentile, it's very difficult. I mean, we get people that are paid, on the 90th percentile, and they approach us and they say they feel as if they're underpaid and they need, they need a 10% increase or a 15% increase. So it's very, very difficult. And I think our approach to that is, when we have a candidate, you know, with a very high salary that is looking to move to an employer, you know, we would just state it up front, is, you know, to say to the employer, listen, this person is earning X, his or her expectations is Y, and just, it's their decision whether they want to go that far or not.
Wilhelm, I'll wrap up by asking 2 questions that have come via the app, and you can use that to wrap up some of your closing thoughts. But how do SA salaries compare to actuaries working internationally is one. And secondly, can we split qualified actuary salaries into general management and non-management? The 6 million rand gap is so huge, so it would help us understand where we fit in better.
So the first question regarding international salaries, we've placed a number of people internationally over the last 2 years. And I mean, very, very seldom I see people being financially better off in a different country. South Africa's actuaries are earning really well. And I mean, nominally you might earn a bit more, you know, in the UK or in Germany or in Holland. But if you look at the cost of living, there's no way, you know, you can have the same standard of living in a European country than, or Australia or New Zealand for that matter. Most people that sort of leave, you know, don't do it for money. You know, they do it because they want to travel or they've got a certain view of the country. So, yeah, I mean, with almost without exception, you know, people that have moved overseas in the last 2 years via us have, I mean, they've received more money nominally, but when you factor in cost of living, they're better off in South Africa. And so, yeah, I mean, we encourage people to stay. I think we've got a role to play in South Africa. And then secondly, how do you differentiate between general management and sort of, I think we try to do that with the sort of managers and specialists. And it's not quite giving you an answer, but maybe that is something we can look at going forward. But I mean, there is a big difference between, you know, in packages between people, you know, managing people, you know, willing to, managers managing people, large groups of people, which, I mean, managing people is difficult. I'm involved with a couple of schools, and managing teachers, and, you know, it's tough. And managing actuaries is just as tough. So they get rewarded for that. But yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, if I can wrap up, I mean, we're more than happy to have, you know, offline discussions. I mean, and yeah, there's definitely some other insights that I can share with people, maybe not from a platform like this. But yeah, I appreciate the time, appreciate your efforts to come here, and hopefully it was worth your while, and sorry about the video not having sound.
Wilhelm, thank you so much. I have never heard so many adults giggle in one sitting in the same area at the same time, but I can see why it's the most popular session at the conference. Really appreciate your time. You have a few more moments to stretch your legs as we start the next concurrent sessions from 1:15. Thank you.